This week in the conversation, I have the honor to welcome Illinois-based writer Sara Bushway. She's the author of a Western fantasy titled Honey Beaumont. We're going to be talking about her book, a debut novel. But before we get into the video, I just want to remind everyone that it's important to subscribe to this channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it'll go directly into your protocol. Remember, comment, like, and of course, subscribe. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this evening with writer Sara Bushway. She's the author of a Western fantasy titled Honey Beaumont. But before we get into it, into the story, I would like to ask Sara, would you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Sara Bushway?
All right, here it goes. Sara Bushway, me. I am an unconventional author. I grew up in a home where nobody was really much of a writer. My dad is a musician and a teacher. He doesn't teach music, but he is a teacher. And my mom, she worked in a law office, and I grew up and wanted to be a psychologist. So there's really no book writing in that whatsoever.
Okay.
But I had a passion for writing research and stuff like that. And the book just kind of accidentally happened.
Really?
Really, actually, my book started out as writing a backstory for a character for Dungeons and Dragons, which I do play.
Okay.
And then it became several chapters long, and then it was a book. And at that point, why not try to see if you can give it to the world, you know?
Okay.
So I actually started in poetry in high school, and the book thing, like I said, it kind of happened randomly just a couple years ago. So I guess I like to say I'm an unconventional author because everybody else says I've been wanting to publish a book since I was 10 years old, and me, I was 30 going, what now?
Okay.
I'm actually I work in a rehab facility. I work in inpatient substance abuse rehabilitation as a counselor. I have 2 cats and a husband. They're all awesome and very supportive.
Okay, I can imagine. You know what they say, that you can't be a writer if you do not have the support of your spouse.
It's true. It's true. You need all the support in the world because we are our own worst critics, and our spouses are able to get us out of that. So, but yeah, that's basically it. I'm a typical Midwestern woman.
Okay. Is that the reason why you've developed such a passion for this type of genre, Western fantasy?
I think so because you know, like the Midwest, it's not really all that West, but we do get a touch of that sort of cowboy feel in some of our smaller towns. I was actually just recently up in Grafton, Illinois, where it's very rural. There are literal cowboys, there are horses and farms and everything, and it really struck a chord with me. And I love it. I've never actually been out west, but someday I do want to go see like a real cowboy.
You know what? I've never been to Illinois, but I've been to Indiana. I
Oh yeah.
graduated when I did my doctorate degree at Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh.
So I used to take the bus all the way to Atlanta. I used to live down in South Florida, and then driving through the country to Tennessee, to Nashville, to Louisville, Kentucky, and then all the way to the heartland. Before I get to Bloomington, Indiana, it was really kind of fantasy in itself, driving through the small town and then to the Amish country and see those folks that. Now, let me ask you a question. In Illinois, are there Amish communities too?
Illinois, I've never run into many. I'm in southern Illinois, kind of close to St. Louis, so we don't see a lot of it here. There are a few Amish communities across the border in Missouri, though, and it's extraordinarily common to see a group of people dressed in traditional Amish clothing just walking around at the St. Louis Zoo and Walmart and things like Walmart. We see them all the time. It's not even weird.
Okay. Right. No. So, how did you really come to get to title the book this way, Honey Bone?
I titled it after the character, and I thought it was appropriate because it started as building a Dungeons and Dragons character. It is very much a character-centered story,
Right.
and it's really about his thoughts and his feelings and stuff. And I really wanted to make sure that didn't get lost because it's such a strange world. There's so much going on. I didn't want it to be, cowboys in Fantasyland or anything like that. I wanted to make sure this book is about this character. It's entirely wrapped around him because without it, it couldn't have happened.
You didn't kill a lot of people.
Nope. Nope.
Not really. Okay. So you also have a minor in literature.
I do.
So I know usually people who major in literature, not necessarily in creative writing, they turn out to be professors at universities, and or maybe to choose a specific area like comparative literature, or study Russian literature, maybe Eastern European literature, things like that. Was there any specific area that you focused on when you were doing your minor?
Literature actually came about because I had wanted to minor in creative writing. Because at one point I had an idea to write a textbook using a narrative that I could teach like psychological ideas within. Sort of like how there's a book about the Three Little Pigs versus the Big Bad Wolf that teaches people about law, like they have a court case about it. I kind of wanted to have a narrative story that teaches people psychological terminology and ideas because some people learn better that way.
Right.
So I actually had wanted to get creative writing, but it was going to cost me 2 extra classes, which would have cost me an extra semester.
Right.
I did literature, and the teacher actually worked with me to do those creative writing things anyway.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, so we kind of were working around a minor problem because I had gone to a smaller school when I got my associates. So I transferred into the university, and they were like, well, you're going to be short if you do that.
Okay.
So literature was an easier path, but it was the same teacher. He was actually the head of the whole department, and he still would give me like the assignments from those classes, and he would help me with that, which I was so grateful for.
Okay. So now I'll going back to the story itself. I know writers usually after they conceive a manuscript, then they say it's easier to write the story, but it's harder to get that platform that will allow you to share it to the world.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So after you conceived the story, Sarah, so who did you go to?
Like you mean for getting it published?
Yes.
I did a ton of research on tons of things. I was positive I was going to have to go self-publish route because I'm not a known author. I hadn't been writing for forever and ever, really. So I gathered a ton of information on how to self-publish through Kindle and through a few other routes. But I decided what I was going to do was I was going to research about 20 small publishers and send them out my information. I ended up sending out only 9 submissions and they were all small publishers. Most were in the U.S. And my 9th one came back from 5310, who are based in Canada.
Okay. And so I was going to ask you. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. They're based in Canada. It's a relatively small, relatively newer company, I believe. They were part of something else, and then now they're not, I suppose. But what I loved about them was that their questions about like, tell us why we should pick your book and stuff, they seemed to appreciate that I was like, you've never read anything like this, and I talked up my book hardcore, and they just loved that because most people go, well, you should pick my book because I want to get published. Or some convoluted answer. My thing was, I was like, look, I have mashed together what is essentially Oliver Twist. I've got cowboys, I've got fantasy, I've got steampunk, I've got all kinds of stuff. You have never read this story before. And I went on and on about it, and they were like, wow, that sounds crazy and different. Let's do this.
Okay.
So, and but yeah, I mean, really the big thing though is heavily researching who you're submitting to, because they had a thing out on Twitter saying they were looking for manuscripts. So I went to their website and I was like, what are they looking for?
Right.
They said they liked fantasy, and they said they liked a lot of different things. There's only really a few things they don't publish, I believe, or at the time they were saying they didn't want, but they definitely said fantasy, and urban fantasies fantasy. So I
Okay.
went ahead and submitted. I do find that a lot of people expect high fantasy, I think.
Right.
So I was a little bit worried they were going to say no because it's atypical. It's weird, but it's been a great matchup. They've been really good to me considering I knew nothing about the publishing industry when I started this.
No. And you're not alone on this one. If you could see in the group in the writing community that we're in on Twitter, a lot of people seem lost when it comes to pitching the work to publishers or to even literary agencies. It's a tough world out there. And where is 5310 located in Canada? Is it in British Columbia or
I believe they were close to Ontario. They moved.
Ontario? Okay.
Yeah, they did move locations.
Okay.
So, but they're still located in Canada, and yeah, it's still a relatively small startup thing. But I know the people that work there, and they're both fantastic. This poor man named Eric, I sent him messages all the time. I'm like, can you answer this question? Can you answer that question? Should I be doing this? And
Okay.
he's been there every step of the way. He's been fantastic.
Okay. Okay. And that makes you feel proud about your work too.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they're as invested as I am, it makes me feel like they care about my book, because that's what I was terrified about, is if I got an agent or a publisher that was like, it's just another book, push it through. You get
Exactly.
no, you don't get any input for the cover or anything. We're just going to do whatever's going to sell. I wouldn't feel good about it, because for me, this isn't about just another book being published. This is my first book. And since, this is a passion project for me, I needed it to feel good, because I'm like, this isn't just a money maker. This is something that I loved. I spent 2.5 years writing and editing Honey Beaumont before I ever sent it to anyone to be looked at.
Okay, let me
So,
stop right here. You
okay,
say writing it and editing.
yes.
Now, do you have like a personal editor you work with, or you self-edit your work?
So what I had was I did self-edit quite a bit. One of the things that I do is I like to print it up and see it in print, because it's weird, but I'll find certain typos and stuff easier if I have it printed than if I'm looking at it digitally. I can't explain it. But what I also had working for me was, for about 1 year, I believe, of the writing process, I was part of a novel workshop. So I'm on writing.com, which is a writing community, obviously.
Okay.
And as part of the novel workshop, there was like 10 or 12 authors on there, and we'd all take turns reviewing each other's chapters.
Okay.
So it was like a little round robin thing of, I would review a chapter of someone else's book, they'd come back and review a chapter of mine, and they'd tell me, oh well, this wording's weird, or you don't need a comma there. And you don't use 100% of the feedback you get, because some of that is your voice, and you don't want to take you out of your book.
You know what? Let's stop you for a second. It's so true what you say, Sam. Yeah, it's true. When you get your work and you tend to have several people to take a look at it,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna read it. And they come back with tons of suggestions.
Yep.
When you take a closer look at this, you say, well, these people, they don't want you to write the story. They want you to write their story. Because it all comes down to a question of taste,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not necessarily based on the strategic components necessary for creative writing.
Exactly.
So you told them no, and in some instances, right?
Some of them, yeah. Well, some of them there were more lines red penned than not. I was like, oh my gosh. But some things I took to heart, though. They were like, well, his what he says is one thing, and that's your character, and they're like, but your wording over here is unclear. And I'm like, I can get on board with that. I want to be clear. I want to have good grammar and all that good stuff. But there were some things that I was like, I'm not willing to budge on my character, because the whole thing is about this guy.
Exactly.
So,
That's your protagonist.
and yeah, and I was trying to convey certain things through him, and if I change too much about him, those things may get lost.
Exactly.
So I learned this from one of my English teachers in college. They said, don't take you out of your papers. Don't take you out
It's
of your
true.
story. names. And because that's what makes it different is if everybody writes their papers the same way, why are we bothering?
And there was a friend who told me once, all these little suggestions will ultimately stop once the story is between the covers. It all stops. It all stops. It's that people try to influence your work. That's what it is. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think that you plan on staying with the same type of genre, Western fantasies, or would you like to transition to maybe historical novels or other type of genres?
I have a lot of different genres that I dip my toes into. I do like the steampunk aspect on top of fantasy. I do have another story idea with that. It's not a
Okay.
Western. It's a little more fantasy, but it still has those steampunk elements.
Okay.
But I'm working on a trilogy of books. It's actually supernatural.
Okay.
Angels, demons, things like that.
Okay.
And that's about all I can give you on that. but I like to kind of get a little bit into everything, because I don't like being locked down into one thing. I don't want to be one genre and one book series. I'd rather be like I'd rather reach out and touch somebody who goes, oh well, I liked this book by this person. What if I like that book? And maybe that book will make them like another genre. Maybe it'll teach them that not all fantasy is Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. Maybe not all supernatural is like the Laurel Hamiltons and
Okay. Okay.
because I like to bridge the gaps is what I like to do. So I mean, for me, I guess as an author or someone who magically became an author one day out of nowhere, I just like to write. I like to write what I like to write is really what it is. I would struggle to be one of those people who writes to sell because the stories I have in mind are not quite mainstream, and and for me it's not about selling. I mean selling is nice and knowing my books are getting to people is nice, but it's actually just a little bit more self-fulfillment for me.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what comes the literary success, in the
Right.
sense that um, sometimes you would go to Barnes and Nobles or any other retail bookstores, and then you pick up a book and you read the story, and a couple of weeks later, you don't remember anything. That's why one of the things that one of my friends would call what they call that fast food novels,
Yeah.
Burger King novels, But when you pick up a story and that character, Honey Bowman, will stick into your mind.
That's
You
my
take
goal.
the protagonist from point A all the way to point B, to going through challenges,
Right.
pitfalls and success, and you see what I mean, and that will click.
Right. And that's sort of my hope because Honey Beaumont is a story of hope. He comes from a very, very terrible beginning. And when he ends, he has achieved his dreams. He's vindicated everything he's been through. And it's very much a story of hope. He's a very positive character, but there's moments where he's like, maybe I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
But then he turns around and he's like, yes, I can. Because why can't you? You only can't if you think you can't.
Yes. Um, that's so true. Now, my next question, because we're getting to the end of the conversation, my next question is you may not read as much as you would love to as a writer,
Yes.
but every writer has a favorite writer.
Yes.
Who is your favorite writer? It doesn't have to be an American writer.
I mean, I guess my favorite writer that I've probably read the most books by at this point is Tamara Pierce. She wrote a series called Protector of the Small, which is about a young girl who wants to be a knight, and
Okay.
it's a 4 book series, and she puts her through the ringer and everything. But it's a really great series because it's not super easy where they just let her do it, obviously, because knights are men.
Okay.
And
I know exactly where you're coming from. Yeah.
I like it though. Oh, you know what? That's my thing is I tell people all the time, like I nothing against other story writers, nothing against, Harry Potter or anything, but I'll take a hero who busted butt to get where they are over the chosen one any day. Any day of the week. because I like that, someone who wants to be the hero. I don't like the forced hero or the prophecy, because you didn't work for that. You're not, it's kind of unrealistic in some instances because they're not really prepared for it, but they end up in that scenario. I like the person who said, I want to be that guy. I want to be the knight. I want to be the hero. And they work hard to get there, because I think that that's more realistic, that if you want to be a doctor, you're going to go through like 10 years of schooling, and that's hard. You take all that time, and then you become a hero in the medical field. And I think that's a lot more realistic than, well, I wasn't born, as rich as Bruce Wayne, so I'll never be anything.
Right.
And I think that's what we teach people when we use the prophecy, the chosen one, is that if you're not the one, you'll never be the one. And I think that's really unfair.
No, it is unfair. It is unfair. Although I recognize there are some unexpected circumstances that can propel someone to be a hero.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I would agree with you. That can be something originally instilled in your mind, heart. I want to be that hero.
Right.
Yeah. So besides that, other question I'd like to ask my writers too in the conversation, if we can put literature aside just for a bit. So what is your favorite cuisine?
My favorite cuisine? Okay, well, you can't tell by looking at me because I'm all blonde haired and blue eyed, but I'm actually Italian, and I eat a lot of Italian food. Like,
really?
I'm telling you, man, my husband gets mad because I put a lot of garlic in everything I cook. He's not wrong, and I'm not sorry. It's true. We eat a lot of Italian food at every family event, Christmas, even Thanksgiving. There will be pasta, because that's part of us. It's weird if there's not pasta.
Okay. Is your husband Italian too?
Huh?
Is he Italian also?
So my husband he's from New England, and they're sort of French Canadian. So he's used to a lot of seafood and stews and things. And I'm like, nah, we're eating pasta. I'm going to make lasagna. We're going to have garlic bread. And he loves it though, because when he met me, he's like, this is so weird and different, but I love it. And I'm like, you better love it, because this is what I'm doing.
You have no choice at this point.
This is who I am. Too much garlic is who I am.
Okay. But how about now music at this point? Music.
I listen to a lot of different types of music. A lot of what I listen to is like, I still like a lot of the old like 90s and early 2000s metal. I listen to 9 Inch Nails, Metallica, things like that. For a lighter mood, I like Lindsay Sterling, who she plays an electric violin, and she does music. Like, she sort of like redoes music from video games, very fantasy style.
Okay.
But what I recommend to everybody, especially if they play Dungeons and Dragons or if they need writing music, put on the Lindsay Sterling channel on Pandora. Pandora is free.
And I have Pandora also on my phone.
And yeah, you play it in the background, and just these wonderful, surreal music just comes on, and the images in your mind, all kinds of great stuff. I find it very soothing, because I find it hard to write whenever I have music that has words going on.
So are you saying that music sometimes can help your writing?
Absolutely. I recommend it whenever I'm writing fight scenes. There's certain songs that I like to play, because it sounds like battle music. Or like whenever I was writing Honey Beaumont, I must have listened to Round Table Rival by Lindsay Sterling 200 times, because it has this very Western feel about it, and I
200 times.
I must have. I'm sure if Pandora says that someone listened to that song, 2 million times, 500,000 of that was me. I'm pretty sure. But it was very much in tone with what I wanted.
Right.
Which was fantastic. Just like how whenever I'm writing campaigns for Dungeons and Dragons, I like to listen to all sorts of different stuff on that Lindsay Sterling channel, because it's very fantasy-esque. It's ethereal and sounds natural, and it really helps get the creative juices going.
Okay, so now the last question, Sarah. If there's one lesson you want to give to a writer like you, would want to embark upon a journey to teach the world about what you like to write about, and also using your pen to send a message, what would it be?
If I could send one message through my writing, I think it would have to be that hope never dies, because you have to have hope to get anything done. The minute you give up, that's when you're done. If you haven't given up yet, you've got a shot. It's gonna suck. It might hurt. It might take a long time. But as long as you have hope, you're still getting there.
That's perfect. This is wonderful. And with that, I'm gonna say it was such a pleasure to have Sara Bushway. And believe me, I like talking to you. You're so funny, and you make the conversation so lively.
Oh,
And I'm pretty sure that this isn't the last time you are in the conversation. When the sequel, when the next one, I think we're probably going to have to sit down and have just another conversation. Yes.
Yeah, well, and because I thought, oh, it's an interview, but I didn't want to be like all stiff like a job interview. I'm like, these are people who love books and writing and crap just like me.
Exactly.
They're like best friends. They're just all over, all over
Exactly. Exactly.